So Mike's rule, the strength of an argument is inversely proportional to the effectiveness of the argument, is something that we're going to see in just a moment in real time. And it's not a good thing. I wish Mike's rule was wrong, but it's not. And now, unlike all the other topics tonight, we started with my take, and now we're going to go into detail. Now we're going to explain the what. So first things first, just so we're clear, before I get gaslit, we should be opting out of the zoning mandates being imposed upon New Milford by Hartford because zoning matters should be handled at the municipal level, and anything else is a dereliction of your duly elected duty. That's the only reason. That's the only conversation to be had. And like I said, we're not even going to read the legislation because the principle I just presented is true regardless of the content of the legislation. Unfortunately, though, this is largely why, excuse me, this is largely why zoning voted to opt out of the, fortunately, this is largely why zoning voted to opt out 4-1, though it's not a winning argument. We've been here before. We did this before. Town council voted to opt out 5-3, which was not enough to meet the 2/3 majority requirement of the opt-out clause, which means this was actually imposed upon us at the time. So why are we revisiting this? The thing failed. And in fact, this is why I spoke at public comment. Let me pull up my public comment so you guys can see it. And, I would like it. Maybe there's a rationale, but we got to cover our behinds at the very least. Why is it that we're revisiting this? This is 13. I would love to hear from the attorney the rationale for agenda item 9 being on here. I am totally in favor of opting out of the statutes, even though I like the statutes. They should be coming from the town of New Milford. We have a zoning ordinance process for a reason. That should be devolved to us. However, my desired outcome was decided upon and didn't happen. So this was an L for me, if you will. But we already decided upon this. And though the opt-out did not achieve, though there was a majority, the opt-out did not achieve the necessary, I believe it was 2/3 to opt out. So I'm not saying it shouldn't be on the agenda. I'm saying I'd like to know the reason. And the attorney is here to give us a good reason, especially if we're doing a CYA job, covering your behind in the event that, something gets brought up. Why was this decided upon twice? Why was this on the agenda twice? So that's all I would like for tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And we know exactly who it is that would bring that question up, and we know exactly who it is who would say, why was this brought up twice? And you should cover your behind. And when you ask a question, you should get an answer. And Monday night, I did.
To Attorney DeBello, I know by adding this back to the agenda, there has to be a kind of a new information. I know they continue to modify tons of different regulations in Hartford. So if you could opine as to what the new information that maybe the council hasn't heard, or the public itself, when it comes to this.
If the council hasn't heard it or hasn't assimilated it. The new information, I wasn't at that meeting, I wish I was. Because what it doesn't do, it doesn't tell you how this interacts with the rest of with the statute. And an example is mobile homes are now allowed as a matter of right on a single family property and as an accessory. We have lots that are down to 5,000 square feet in this town. That's something that needed to be understood. And I know you articulated it, but it didn't seem to be understood. So the reality is that, by the way, it's not a legal issue as to whether or not you consider this. It's a parliamentary issue under Robert's Rules of Order. The law does not preclude you from doing this.
Okay.
But again, it's up to your rules. So, but the reality is that if the commission, if the council feels that it did not have a sufficient world of information in order to make its determination, it can certainly consider it again. You're not stuck with bad legislation. I mean, Congress does it all the time.
And we've been here before. I'm going to share a link in the comments section now so you guys can see it. We have done all of this conversation before. This is for February 14th, 2022 Town Council meeting, where we went through all of this. And we were, at the time, stuck with bad legislation, and now we are not. As you can see, that's Bill Taylor presenting before the Town Council on February 14th, 2022. It's also where I made my commentary from before. What you guys should really do is check out Bill Taylor's brilliant full comments from that meeting. They're over 20 minutes long. I have them separated out into another video. Let me know in the comments. Should I be uploading it? Is this something you guys would be interested in? Because it's a brilliant dismantling and takedown of not only all of the false information and misinformation that was being spread at the time about the thing, but he also goes into brilliant detail and articulates the argument in a way that even I can't, surrounding not only why it is that the legislation itself is dumb and bad, according to him, but also why, on principle, we should be opting out of this, and that's why there was a 4-1 majority at the zoning board to opt out of these Hartford-originated mandates. So let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in. Again, it's brilliant, but it's like 20 minutes long. And at that meeting, it was clear that 5 town council members understood the point that Bill was making, that I'm making here tonight. We needed 6 town councilmen to understand that point in order to actually succeed in opting out, because we needed a 2/3 majority. And on that note, very briefly, if you're not going to be attending these town council meetings, you shouldn't be on town council. Resign. And that applies to the Republicans when they're not there for important decisions like the one I'm talking about. And that applies to, and I'll say her name, Mary Jane Lundgren. I'm sorry, Mary Jane, but if you're going to miss 8.5 months of town council meetings in person, then you should be resigning. And you should be finding somebody who can fill your shoes. Find a Democrat who's going to stand in your stead. I don't even care at this point. And no, we should not be allowing, especially now, we should not be allowing the councilmen to not have their feet held to the fire by the presence of the people in the room. When somebody addresses the podium at town council for public comment, you shouldn't have the protection, the proverbial protection of this screen. The virtual participation of town councilmen should have been over months ago. P, if you wind up watching this, Kate, if you guys are watching this, for the love of God, change the rules. Change the town council procedural rules and get rid of that stupid rule. Don't allow for virtual participation, in person or bust. And if there's a health concern that means that you can't even be in attendance at these meetings for 8.5 months, find someone else. Find someone else. And again, I'm dunking on a Republican here who wasn't who wasn't able to attend that meeting, or who didn't attend that meeting. I don't care if you're not able or not. If you're not able, then you're not able. If you're not able to attend, you're not able to serve. So don't. But Nahum was there. Mike Nahum was there, and he summed up the whole thing 9 months ago in actually just under a minute.
I guess the question I have is, why is the state given, they want to have more accessory apartments, why are they giving us the ability to opt out?
Because I think they realize that when you get to some of the other out of the urban areas, it doesn't always fit.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm trying to get.
It just does not fit.
The state cannot create a regulation that fits for New Milford and fits for Bridgeport. It's just too hard, and to not want this left at the local level doesn't make any sense to me. Why would we cede any power to the state, whether we agree with them 100% or not? The argument we should have been having was at your meetings, at your public hearings, if you felt that's when it should have been done. Now we're getting the recommendation at a supermajority from zoning to go against that recommendation without having been at all those meetings. To me, would not be fair. In general, I feel that if Hartford's going to give us the ability to leave things at a local level without the quote unfunded mandate, I think that's just the way to go.
Damn right. And that's all there should be to it. And the town attorneys apparently very much agreed.
So I have a question. Did you have somebody from the state come and speak with you?
No, we took it to our town attorney, Randy DeBella, and he
That
worked
was
with
it.
us to understand the legalities of this. He worked with the other state land use and town attorneys, and they came back with a unanimous recommendation. To my knowledge, Attorney Tower could correct me if I'm wrong, opt out was the advice we got, not only from our town attorney, but from multiple town attorneys.
So part of this conversation has to center around the point Mike was making at the beginning of his of what he was saying before. Why is there an opt-out in the legislation in the first place? These sort of things are super, super rare when it comes to legislation. Super rare. Why would you build a legislation and then also build a way to not have to adhere to the legislation? It should be fairly self-evident based on the fact that it's an opt-out that you're building into a piece of legislation. But these opt-out clauses are usually a red flag for terrible legislation. According to Councilman Cosgrove and me, since I also watched the process, the legislation was so unpalatable that the opt-out was the only way it would pass in the House and Senate in Hartford, with Democrat near supermajorities in both the House and Senate. So here's Chris Cosgrove with the real reason that the opt-out clause was there in the first place.
Mike, and if I could add one thing to that, I followed this legislation as it was going through in Hartford pretty closely. And the opt-out came later in the process, I think because it was so unpopular outside of the larger urban areas. They couldn't have passed this legislation.